Thank you for bearing with us as we get organized. Thank you, Chairman Kirwan and members of the Commission for the invitation to present. The recommendations developed by the Dyslexia Task Force, officially known as the Task Force to Study the Implementation of a Dyslexia Education Program. My name is Laura Schultz, and I represented parents on the task force. Also here today are task force members and special educators LaVonda Roundtree and Robin Szymanski. Task force members were appointed by the legislature and the governor and represent a diverse, bipartisan cross-section of education stakeholders. Members met for 10 three-hour sessions and worked with education experts, consultants, and members of the public. The working relationships formed during task force meetings carried over to action. The Assistant State Superintendent of Special Education reached out to stakeholder groups like the Education Advocacy Coalition to create the Dyslexia Technical Assistance Bulletin. This bulletin and the collaborative relationship with state special education continues to make a difference for students, but we cannot stop with special education. The task force recommendations were informed by reading and neuroscience professionals who provided research on how to identify and provide interventions for at-risk readers and students with dyslexia in the general education classroom. These are some of the experts that presented to us and some of the consultants that we also worked with. The task force made 6 recommendations to improve reading instruction and developed a scalable reading pilot program that includes accountability, which is something you were just discussing, and it includes a universal reading screening protocol as well. The task force recommended that Maryland 1 recognize and address the needs of students with dyslexia in all settings, and MSD has been working with stakeholders to do that. 2, implement a universal screening protocol to identify struggling readers in kindergarten. It's essential to identify children early before they fall and fail. 3, create an integrated, tiered system of supports for struggling readers across all school districts. Early reading difficulties are not just the domain of special education. 4, use evidence-based reading instruction, known as structured literacy, for all beginning readers and particularly for those who struggle to learn to read. 5, make substantive changes to pre-service and in-service reading instruction. There are 5 parts to this recommendation, and we applaud Maryland for its work to revise required reading courses for teacher candidates. 6, implement and fund a reading pilot program in Maryland. The pilot would create a model with accountability to identify struggling students, to provide effective instruction in an integrated tiered system, and to provide structured literacy professional learning for teachers. The components of the pilot and the costs are summarized in your handouts, if you have handouts, and if you don't, we do have I can scroll to those, but I don't want to take up too much time because I have 2 more speakers here. But we do have details on the pilot program and its components and the funding available for you if you're interested. I'm going to pass the floor over to LaVonda.
Good afternoon. I am a teacher, so I'd like to invite you, all of you, to do a really quick exercise. Okay, if you could close your eyes for about 10 seconds and imagine, okay, think about what you would not be able to do right now if you did not have the ability to read. I will call on someone. Okay, great. Mr. Hedelman, one thing you would not be able to do now if you couldn't read? Okay. 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 So now I'd like for you to imagine if you couldn't read, things you couldn't do as an adult, like simple things like ordering from a menu, okay, getting a job, things of that nature. Now, when you think about that, and you're a 3rd grade and you're looking at some of the things here on the screen and you're not able to read it. And a teacher like me, something I say to you, try harder. What's the first sound? Come on. Can't you go a little faster? Oh, gosh, you really need more practice. You need to go home and practice. My name is LaVonda Roundtree, and I am a certified special educator in a public school system, and I was that teacher. I want to impress upon you the need for appropriate teacher training. As a certified special educator with a master's degree, I still was unable to effectively teach all of my students how to read. With everything I was taught to do, these students still made minimal progress. I decided that I would no longer be embarrassed by this failure and ignorance of the reading process. I went back to school but used non-traditional institutions because what I needed wasn't available at the university. The 4 required training courses for reading and for in-service teachers wasn't enough for the intense reading problems that I faced in my classrooms over the years. My decision to advance myself in the reading processes was one of the best decisions I've made for my academic career. As a reading intervention teacher, my students were top performers in intervention when compared to other classrooms using the same program. The results in high performance were a direct result of my knowledge that I now hold. The only issue I have with this quest was that it was terribly expensive. Because of my previous ignorance of reading, I'm confident that I somehow have contributed to the unemployment rate and or the population of those who are incarcerated. No teacher ever wants that. Secondly, the cost to receive this training was quite costly, in the thousands of dollars, and could not be reimbursed because I didn't go to a university to receive that education. I strongly believe that every student has the right to read, but their teachers deserve to learn the appropriate reading practices of structured literacy in college before they enter and dock our schools. Not only would the cost of special education decrease, the rates of illiteracy, incarceration, and unemployment will decrease. Pre-service training in structured literacy is a win for the state of Maryland.
Thank you, LaVonda. And I am Robin Szymanski. I'm a high school special educator from Carroll County who was given an opportunity by MSEA with the cooperation of CCPS to sit on the dyslexia task force that Laura Schultz spoke about and explained earlier. And I thank you, Chairman Kirwan, and members of the Commission for the invitation to spend some time with you this afternoon. I'm here to tell you a story. I could, however, spend some time providing you with a list of my experience, certifications, degrees, but I don't want to use the valuable time that you've given us for that purpose. The most important things I can say about myself is that I'm one of the teachers who is working every day with students who represent the achievement gap. I'm working with high school students who are now faced with needing to meet high school graduation requirements with insufficient reading skills. Let me tell you Jared's story. Go ahead. Next one. So meet Jared. This is Jared, his first day in kindergarten. He's happy. He likes school. Next, please. Oops. There we go. This is Jared now in 4th grade. He's no longer smiling. His friends aren't around. He's sad and detached. His teachers are saying he can't keep up. When he's called upon in class, his friends laugh at him. His report card is starting to say he's falling behind in reading and written language. And his parents don't quite know what to do with him. He started lying to them, saying that he has no homework. And this is Jared in late September of 9th grade. He was told to leave his class because he was being disruptive. A teacher had called on him to read aloud from the textbook. He refused. He was disrespectful. The school had had several meetings with parents regarding the behaviors. He was assigned to in-school suspension 3 times in the first month of school. Jared was only reading at a 2nd grade level. So what did we do? We devised a plan to give Jared intensive reading instruction 3 times a day. He had instruction during his reading class, during our daily scheduled academic enrichment time, and Jared agreed to eat lunch with one of us 3 or more times per week and work on his reading at the same time. This meant that 3 teachers gave up their planning times and duty-free lunches to help Jared. We did this throughout his 9th grade year. So now meet Jared after that intensive instruction. He was called upon to read aloud. His friends started to laugh, expecting those typical behaviors they'd been seeing for so many years. One friend spoke up and stated, "We can't laugh at Jared anymore. He can read now." Jared had no discipline referrals for 3 months. His teachers reported that he continued to read below grade level, but his reading skills had improved to a level that he needed minimal help in class to complete his grade level work. And the next, please. And here's Jared today. He works a construction job. He has a home and family. He's often had conversations with his mother that he wished he had learned to read better when he was younger, that he would have done better in high school. He does want to set a good example for his son and is reading to him nightly. So now let's talk about some priorities for reading instruction in Maryland. Our current teachers, especially our K through 2, need in-service education. They must be able to recognize cascading indicators of reading failure, and they must be able to teach foundational elements of reading, writing, and spelling. We need the Reading Pilot Program funded, a 6-year program that includes the costs of personnel, training, and administration in 2 school districts with 6 pilot schools and 3 control schools is estimated to cost $10.5 million. Next, please. So in closing, let's think about the reading gap. What we've been doing hasn't worked. Consider how Jared's life could have been different had he received effective, timely, early instruction. Teachers with training in structured literacy will have the tools to help all Jareds. I don't want to watch one more Jared walk out the door of my high school. In closing, I hope Jared's story has helped you better understand the need for appropriate and fair funding to all school districts. We will not improve our students' lot in life without significant change to the funding formula, nor will we close the achievement gap in reading based on our current staffing structures. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Hedelman.
First of all, amen.
Thank you.
Thank you to the task force, and a particular shout out to Laura Schultz of Decoding Dyslexia of Maryland, which was the moving force behind the task force recommendations. I guess the comments I want to make is that I appreciate the political necessity or feasibility of a pilot project, but we know how to deal with struggling readers along the dyslexia continuum, and it takes a lot of interventions, pre-referral. Most of these children would not wind up, even with dyslexia, in special education if we did adequate interventions. In my view, the recommendations of the consultants to the Commission vastly underestimate those costs. I will go back and look at the costs. I don't know whether your pilot program, it talks a lot about training and materials, whether you've looked at the kinds of intensive tutoring that are necessary and so forth. But I would, hope that you all might take a look at that too. I'd be glad to discuss it with you, but that is our task. Again, I want to emphasize that one of the few things we do know is that certain timely interventions can enable these struggling learners along the dyslexia continuum to meet grade level standards. We just have not paid for it.
Yes, and the budget, it's a draft budget, of course, but it is very complete. It has all those things you just mentioned. There were 3 heads of schools on the task force, so they were able to contribute how much everything costs, all of the specialized tutoring, and then we have teachers that were on the task force, so they added, how much their valuable time costs, and so all of those elements are considered in there.
Other comments? Yes, Commissioner Schaefer.
I know it's a substantial amount, but what's the number of students in Maryland that have been diagnosed with dyslexia? Do you have that number or an estimate of?
We don't have a number. There is no way to know that number because for eligibility for special education, they call it specific learning disability. Mm-hmm. So at this time, we don't have any way to know, but usually it's about 12 to 20% of the population has some type of reading struggle or disability, and then for those with dyslexia, the number usually hovers somewhere around 11% with a diagnosis. But for Maryland, I couldn't say for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Yes, Commissioner.
Comment, and this really goes back to Robert as well from the earlier presentation. And I'm just incredibly proud of the work that our members are doing on top of their teaching jobs. And I want to express my personal appreciation.
Well, on behalf of the Commission, I want to express our appreciation. It's just your commitment to serving the needs of children with special needs is inspiring, and we thank you for not only the work you're doing, but for taking the time to come down and offer your thoughts and advice to the Commission.
Well, thank you very much.